I can.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. We have Chief Sullivan here, but before we get to Chief Sullivan's presentation, we're going to go ahead and do the vote. If you need to, if you want to be heard, you'll be sitting right next to the microphone, so just give a shout out.
Okay.
And hopefully, if you have trouble hearing anything, just let us know, and I'm sure that Chief Sullivan will be happy to speak louder.
I'm not good at it.
I'll use my alcohol voice.
Can you hear him?
Actually, I probably will need him to come a little closer.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, very good. All right, so basically then, as I'm calling this meeting to order, I'm going to just announce that Peter Beardmore was unable to be present at the meeting, so he will be participating remotely because he's traveling for business, and this is going to be recorded into the minutes. We do have a quorum present, which is what makes it possible for us to allow for the remote participation. Any votes that we do have to take, we will be taking a roll call, and the only vote that I have on the agenda for today, so I'm just going to go ahead and... Okay, well, I thought I was going to start there, but I lost that email already. So, but the only business that we had to do tonight was to have no, I'm not looking for that. I'm actually looking for the transfer for the language.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. So we needed to transfer some accounts to accommodate the increase in the number of FinCom members attending trainings and meetings. So I'm going to ask for a motion to transfer from line item 534500, which is our advertising line, the amount of $60, and from 573000, which is our dues membership line, $20, to line 573100, which is meetings in schools for FinCom. And those are the only two items I'm going to ask for the transfer for, since the other one wasn't from us. So I would accept a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so we're doing this by roll. So Peter?
Yes.
Jay?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Michelle? Aye. And aye for myself. All right, so that takes care of that, and we're on to the next item where we will have...
Hey, Terry?
Yes?
Terry, quick question.
Sure.
Is this meeting being recorded?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's being videotaped, and the PowerPoint presentations will be given to the PAC so that they can incorporate those into the trainings that the chiefs are going to be giving tonight.
I have a question.
You have a question.
Peter serves as the secretary to the meetings. Can he still serve as secretary while he's doing this remotely since the meeting is recorded?
Actually, I would ask if somebody could just take some minutes. I mean, most of the material that we're going to be working with is going to be in the presentation format, so we can probably put information together. But on the chance that something breaks down somewhere, could I ask somebody to please take some minutes?
I will volunteer unless somebody else really wants to.
Okay.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, so then we will go ahead and, well, I did skip right past. I'm asking you guys are asking all kinds of questions because I skipped right past public comment. Do we have any public comment from anybody in the public? Do we have any other public comment from anybody on the committee? Okay.
I have a comment.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Okay, so at our last meeting, and actually 2 weeks ago, I announced that I would be traveling and not able to attend in person this meeting or the meeting that we have scheduled for 2 weeks from today, where we have the school department budget being presented. And I shared an email with the town manager and the town's IT director requesting technical support to be able to participate in both meetings via Skype or Zoom or some other type of video teleconferencing capability. The response was late and not to my satisfaction. And, I think that this is an issue that the town needs to think about and deal with. Every Tuesday, the town manager reads a list of vacant positions on town boards, and I think we've got about a dozen of them, give or take, and one position on our board. One of the demographics that is not super well represented on town boards is, working age adults, particularly in 30s and 40s age years. And, there are a lot of us that commute back and forth into Boston, in the Boston area every day. There are a lot of us that travel for business, travel that can't be avoided professionally. And if we are going to ask citizens to participate, we need to be able to accommodate them. This is provided for. Remote participation is provided for under Mass state law. And I think it's something that we need to take a look at. The town technology director, in a conference call with the town manager this morning, repeated a comment that he had made to me previously as well, which was, under previous town managers and selectmen's regimes, they wanted to discourage members from participating remotely. And I think that is the wrong way to do it. And I think we need to get serious about how we can encourage people to participate and volunteer on town boards. And I will hopefully be able to participate via video when we do this again in a couple of weeks. So thank you for the time to comment.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. All right, then with that, we'll go to Chief Sullivan.
Thank you. My apologies if I have to keep looking at my notes since we don't have the PowerPoint up and running. But just to give a little bit of history on the fire department and what we do. Still says fire department on the side of the trucks, out of tradition, but we're the all hazards response agency for the community. Generally, if it's not law enforcement related, we're involved with it somehow, with fire, emergency medical services, hazardous materials, technical rescue, emergency management, all falls under the fire department. Currently, the department consists of myself, my administrative assistant, 6 career firefighters, including 4 officers, 2 firefighters, 4 call officers, and approximately 32 on-call firefighters and EMTs. We operate 3 engines, 1 ladder truck, 2 brush trucks, 2 ambulances, and several smaller support vehicles. The current staffing in the fire station, we're covered 24 hours a day with 2 firefighter EMTs. The career staff covers Monday through Saturday on a 48-hour week. Sunday is covered with 2 per diems, which is our call firefighters getting their hourly rate to staff the station for that day. In addition, we have a 3rd firefighter Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., which is also a per diem. So about 23% of our coverage is still per diem, and that also we still rely on the call force heavily as well. In the handout, this was just a reference of what sort of our response times were from back before we were staffed. We only had day coverage to the 24-hour coverage. This is a 5-year difference from 2014 to 2019. And basically, we've gone up from we've had times upwards of 4 minutes and 43 seconds to 5 minutes on average. Previous to now, under 2 minutes average response time. Can you still hear me, Peter?
I can. Okay. You sound great.
Okay. Again, other duties that we handle, fire prevention, safety education, that includes fire investigation, code enforcement, and fire inspections, safety, which is a big part of our job, construction plan review, public education and training. Again, fire deaths, unfortunately, are starting to creep up in the state from an all-time low several years ago. So the efforts that we make on education and fire safety hopefully will work to help bring that down. Training, maintenance, data collection, emergency management, they all are the support functions that fall underneath the fire department. We do spend quite a bit of time on training. The slide there shows a lot of the different things we do. We train twice a month, and occasionally some additional classes. There's quite a bit to follow up. A new firefighter has to go through approximately 240 hours of training at the academy. A new EMT is approximately 140 hours of training. And then for the EMTs, there's 40 hours every 2 years that they have to go through recertification on too, plus specialized training as well. We have people that have trained for the educational part, public life safety educator. We have people trained as for special rescue techniques, technical rescuers. So there's quite a bit of time spent on that. Quickly, on our calls, we did 1,885 calls for service last year. We're down slightly from the year before. However, I did notice, even though the EMS calls dropped slightly, the number we transported went up. So that number hasn't really changed all that much. We transport approximately 71% of all the calls for EMS service. But again, that's about 70% of our overall calls is EMS.
Question.
Yes.
Is the transporting function of the changing demographics in the town?
Yeah, I don't know as a transporting is. It's what we saw as a drop is some of the ones that we don't transport for, lift assists, lifeline alarms that are false alarms,
Yep.
stuff like that. Those seem to have dropped down a
Okay.
little bit. But you do get a fair amount that we either get a call and the person doesn't want to go to the hospital. Maybe they weren't the one who called.
Yeah.
Something like that. So not everybody always goes to the hospital, but if they call, we
Thank you.
call. The next slides were just sort of slides, which I can't really describe all that well, on what our responses have been over approximately the last 19 years and how the calls have changed, gone up and down. They said we've seen a little bit of a drop. I would probably attribute that to a lot as the new growth has decreased somewhat in town. The last several years we saw quite a bit of building in town. Apartment buildings going in, new construction, that's slowed down a little bit. Our activity level may slow down with that. Plus, the good economy, too. Just another slide, too, just again showing where our runs fall during the time of day. We are still busy during the daytime, but the important takeaway from that is we are busy 24/7. In fact, the calls have gone up somewhat on the period between midnight and 8 a.m., which most of the guys can attest to. Why? I don't know. It's a luck of the draw when people call when emergencies happen. They don't give us a crystal ball to plan for them.
Chief, could you just, because we're looking at the handouts and the print is so small, can you just identify what the blue, the green, and the red?
The blue, the greens, the reds, those are different years, going back to 2014. The bright red line is last year, 2019. So the thicker, actually, I'm sorry, you're looking at...
I'm looking at responses by year.
Here, red is fire, green is inspection, blue is EMS, and black is overall, everything together.
Thank you.
On that. Sorry, I'm looking at the next slide.
Okay.
Just one slide showing somewhat the effects of new growth in town of what they've had. This is combined from several of the big projects, both single-family homes and the large apartment complexes like Emerald Place, Rogers Way, Tri-Town, just to kind of show over the years what the run volume has been from that. And the second one, call volume by project, just kind of showed the total number of calls we get from each one of those projects. The takeaway is, again, we're seeing more multifamily apartment-type buildings. The population density is heavier. We see more calls from that than we do from the single-family home developments. Some of them, the numbers change a little bit there. As an example, on that one, you see Emerald Place has gone down. Emerald Place is completely built out, so we're not doing as many inspections. If you look at the actual EMS calls, that hasn't changed all that much in there. So, proposed budget for 2021. The highlights of our budget is an additional career firefighter paramedic. It continues to fund paramedic training in the event that we can't hire a paramedic. Out of the gate, we have to train a basic EMT. It provides funding for our initial transition, hopefully in early 2021, to go for the paramedic license and start operating at that level. There was a couple of above-target requests, which were approved with the exception of one, which was to increase the salary for the call firefighters, to try to increase some callback on the overnight hours from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. The proposal was to go to a 2-hour minimum instead of a single hour.
Okay, and just to clarify, callback is?
Callback is when we go out, almost all of our calls, there's only 2 people on. So we have to rely on the call firefighters to come back, man the other apparatus. The
Okay.
first truck only goes out with 2 people on it. So you still need more people to come in. we don't see as many as we used to, and this has been part of a couple other incentives that we've done to try to generate some more, interest in getting people to come back in to supplement the career force.
Okay.
And we focused a lot on hiring career people. We need to do that, but we can't lose sight that we need to call people too. They're just as important to the operation as the career staff, and we're kind of looking, trying to make that, work for people too. The next slide was salary line items. That was basically what the increases were that were in the approved budget from the town manager. With the exception of call firefighter salary, that was approximately $10,000. It was an increase. It's not currently funded for that. But that was what we were looking at to try to increase that to that 2-hour minimum. So the salary line items, the budget supports one additional firefighter paramedic. This is year 3 of the 5-year plan that we developed. The per diem would continue to be at 88 hours a week to provide full staffing in the station. And again, there was an above target request to get 2-hour minimum for any calls between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. for the call firefighters.
That is 2 per diems per week?
The per diems, it's 88 hours a week would be proposed on that. That would be filling part of a shift plus the 40 hours during the daytime, Monday through Friday, giving us the third. The advantage of the third person in the daytime is it allows the shift officer to go out and do inspections, to handle other duties, and it still keeps the ambulance staffed. The challenge with a town this size is if somebody's out doing an inspection down on Lake Shirley, they could be 10 minutes away from the station, back to the ambulance. So the ambulance can respond, they can meet them on scene. And it gives us 3 people on the truck, if they are in the station, to respond on a fire call.
Thanks.
Just
Hey, Chief.
quick, yes, sir.
Chief.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question. I don't have I didn't bring all of my paperwork with me, and I don't have the town manager's recommended budget in front of me. Does your above target request, is that reflected in her recommended budget, or do you know?
My above target requests were reflected with the exception of the $10,000 for that 2-hour minimum for the overnight. She was not able to fund that at this time.
Okay. Thank
Everything
you.
else was in her target budget to start with, and she was able to fund one other above target request that I'll mention later on.
Okay, so just for clarity's sake, that 274,104, that's actually funded at 10,000 less than that? Is that the idea?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Just quickly, have been some questions on how the overtime works, so I'll just kind of touch that again. For our shifts, the career firefighters, under the collective bargaining agreement, it's their full-time job, they have right of first refusal covering those shifts. If they don't want them, it goes to the per diem firefighters. They're all qualified, as firefighter EMTs, they can work the shifts. The per diem shifts go to the per diems first. If the unlikely event we can't fill one, then it's offered to the career personnel to cover that, which rarely occurs. The numbers that have been put in years past and in the current overtime budget, it's based on a number of what our their earned time off is, some, but not all of the planned sick time, holidays, some callback, and right now it's currently based on about 60% of that total number. And we're running a little bit below that right now because we're covering quite a bit on with the per diem. And the question's been asked about, can we run short and to save on overtime? The basic answer is no. With 2 people, we need 2 people to make the ambulance go out the door. We need 2 people to do pretty much anything. So it's really not an option. We're too bare bones as it is. Some of the bigger cities that have a dozen or more people on a shift, sometimes they can run 1 or 2 people down. We don't have that option at this point. So, again, the staffing is currently under negotiations. We're in the middle of contract negotiations, but the plan would be the additional firefighter would be able to go out and cover 7 days a week with career staff. Could be 3 shifts of 2, 1 shift with a career and a per diem. And then again, the 8 to 4, Monday through Friday on a per diem. The plan again being is we go into another year able to hire another person, you'd have 4 shifts of 2. And then the per diem again would supplement along with that.
Okay.
And again, that's still all to be determined. It's under negotiations right now. The other above-target funding that was in the budget that was provided by the town manager was an increase of $6,000 to cover the potential increase in our medical direction fee to go to the paramedic level for the ambulance. We have to work under a doctor's license. We work through Wachusett Emergency Physicians through Leominster Hospital. That's an agreement we have with them. When we operate at the advanced level, it's a substantially lower fee because of the more that's required of them. When we go to the paramedic level, there is an increase in the fee on that. So that's an amount that was covered for that. Just some kind of updates on the paramedic training. I know there were questions on that. Back in FY19, we hired 2 firefighters. At the time, we had 2 paramedics apply, but withdrew, mostly because of demand for
Hey, Chief.
paramedics. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, can you go back to slide 17 for a moment? I just want to make sure I understand something here. The budget, the other budget items with the fees and licensing. So, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the paramedic level, is that our paramedics have to operate under that license, or is this, I'm confused by that and the ambulance status. Are these not related?
It's a direct part of going from the level that we're at with the ambulance right now to going to paramedic level. And that we operate, technically we operate under a doctor's license now. We have for many years. It's a difference of the level that we operate at. Right now we pay about $5,000 a year for that. Going to paramedic level, that would probably go up another $6,000. They base it on the population of the community.
And are we
That has nothing to
making
do
that?
with the licensing with the state.
Are we making that move in FY 2021?
That is the plan.
Okay.
My plan would be sometime in early calendar 21 that we should have enough staff ready to go that we can make that move, and I'll talk about that shortly.
Okay.
So, yes, sir.
You said the license is under Leominster?
It's through Wachusett Emergency Physicians, which is part of, they provide the emergency physicians for Leominster Hospital.
So what happens when you go to another hospital?
It doesn't matter. We have to have a medical, a doctor. It doesn't matter which hospital we go to, but if, we call in, mostly a lot of the medical control is not only calling in to get direction on the radio, it's also run reviews, continuing education. They come in 4 times a year and do run reviews with us and continuing education. So there's all part of that is involved as well. But it really doesn't matter, what hospital we go to with that. We transport about 84% of our patients to Leominster,
Right.
which is why we kind of look there, among several reasons.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, basically where we were in paramedic training, in FY19 we hired 2 people. We tried to get 2 paramedics, we weren't able to. So we hired 2 basic EMTs, we're paying for them to go to school right now. Again, that program's about $16,000 a year. It's at Mount Wachusett, which is fortunate because it's close by. We're not sending people far, far away to try to get this training. And it takes about 16 months long. So they start in September of one year and end in basically December of the next year. We cover their shifts when they go, and we figure approximately $15,000 a year. It varies from person to person, year to year, depending on how their schedule falls and when they have to go. The whole program, they have to put in that 16 months, not only do they have clinical or classroom time, they have to spend time in hospital, training in different departments, OR, obstetrics, psychiatric. They have to put a lot of time in learning there, and then they have to put in a certain amount of field time riding with another paramedic service. So they're developing their skills during that time. So it takes a while.
So after those 2 EMTs get trained in the 16-month period, they will become paramedics?
They will be paramedics.
Okay. And so so that means fiscal 22 or so?
Next slide.
Next slide. Okay.
Next slide. You're reading ahead. So the next slide was basically the current timeline for paramedic training. So again, one set of training in the fall of 2018. He's going through the testing process with the state right now. He's done the program. The second one started this past fall. He will be finishing up the end of 2020 and testing in early 2021. That will give us 2 paramedics. Hopefully, we can when we hire in July, we can hire another one that's a paramedic. So in theory, that would give us 3.
I have a second question then regarding, again, demographics and increase in the population, particularly the elder people in town. The 2 additional paramedics are sufficient for a town of our size, or are they sufficient for a town of our size plus 2,000 people or whatever?
2 would get us off the ground. And I'll go ahead a little
okay.
further.
I'll shut up.
Sorry.
It's okay.
But again, hopefully by early 2021, we have a minimum of 2, potentially 3. At that point, and part of that is in the capital plan for FY21 is the first batch of advanced life support equipment for the ambulance, which I'll talk a little more on shortly. But that would put us in a position that we can at least start. Would we have the coverage 24/7? No, we probably have a couple of shifts that would happen and a couple that won't. When we go for the licensing initially, once we get the license, we have 3 years, we have to be able to guarantee at least one paramedic on duty all the time and available, at least reasonably available. If they're on another call, that's different. We have to be able to say we can provide them 24/7. And that. So this is why this is year 3 of the 5-year plan, that we'll be looking to get more paramedics beyond 2. Really, effectively, we're going to need 4 to 5 to make it work. So, but again, mid-2020, if we hire another firefighter medic, that same time frame, mid-2020 to early 2021, purchase the first batch of ALS equipment, which is primarily monitor defibrillator and a med storage cabinet. I'll talk about in a little bit. Early 21, hopefully the second firefighter will be able to test, get certified. We'll go for the licensing really to mid-21. Mid-22, again, we'll be looking for, the plan would be another firefighter paramedic. FY22, we'd probably be looking at purchasing a second batch of equipment to fit up the second ambulance, so both would be equipped at a paramedic level. And estimating worst case mid-2022 to 2023, we would be at 24/7 paramedic coverage. And again, there's a lot of different factors in there. It could be earlier. That's 2022 to 23 is probably the worst case scenario. I suspect it would be sooner than that, but that's the direction we're heading. Again, the next slide. Yes, sir.
I probably know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. I've got a couple of questions here. Are paramedics in high demand?
Yes, very much so. There's a lot of towns that are going through the same transition that we are, or have already done it in the last few years. A lot of these communities are hiring. And right now, that's the challenge.
We're going through the process of training folks and putting ourselves in a position where in the next 3.5 years from now, we're going to be obligated to have full-time paramedic coverage. Are the people that we are training, do they have some sort of contractual stay on? Are we protected in any way in this investment?
Yes, we do have an agreement with them. That it's a prorated thing when they were hired on. That they basically have to stay 3 years, or they have to pay back some of the cost of the training if they leave within that 3-year time. And one of the things...
3 years from completion of training, or 3 years from the hire date?
3 years from hire date.
That's underwhelming.
It was taken from another department that's gone through what we've gone through, and that there's some, without spending a lot of time on it, there's some legalities that are involved in there too, on what we can and can't do with that. On the flip side, one of the things that I've looked at when we've hired is I've looked at hiring people that are probably going to stick around, that have some roots in town and may not want to necessarily jump ship for 50 cents an hour somewhere else. But it also is a challenge, to remain competitive with other communities.
Are we paying competitively?
Pay and schedule. Our schedule is longer currently than other communities are in the area. They work a slightly shorter work week than we do. and some of them are paying a little more, or, or they're paying the same, but they work a shorter work week. So those are some of the things that we're faced with. And they're being discussed in negotiations.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
All right. So again, the next slide was, basically the state regulations require 3 years from licensing at paramedic level. We have to say we can provide 24/7 coverage, which would basically means at least one paramedic on duty. Capital plan, just to hit on some of the items under the capital plan. The first item was replacement of half our breathing apparatus stock. Through the help of our state legislators, they gained us an earmark in FY20 for $100,000. That allowed us to replace approximately half of our self-contained breathing apparatus that we use for firefighting. The units that we had were about 12 years old. We've been running into, they were the first generation with the new fancy electronics on them. We found that they maybe weren't the best. It was a great idea to buy the newest thing coming along. The newer units are lighter, and they seem to have a better track record on that. But the second one of the requests in FY21 was $115,000 to replace the other half of our breathing apparatus.
Now, are we replacing them, Chief, because they're functionally out of...
They're past the 10-year mark on
Okay.
them, which drives you crazy when it's $6,000 a unit
Yeah.
for that. But the days of them, of them lasting 20 years are long gone, especially with the electronics. That's the bigger issue, is we're spending a lot of money fixing them.
Okay. All right.
We did apply for an AFG grant to try to replace these units last year. We were turned down on that, so we're heading in that direction. The second thing on the capital plan was the equipment for the first ambulance for paramedic level, which is most of that, they list $50,400. Well, $35,000 of that is the cardiac monitor defibrillator that we have to have for the paramedic unit. The second part of that is, I know in the picture it looks like a vending machine. It's a military-grade vending machine. It's designed for storage of medical supplies. At the paramedic level, we're carrying a lot more controlled substances than we currently do now. We need to be able to track them, keep them secure. The ambulance has ways to secure them in there. This would be more for storage at the station, but we can put certain medications, equipment that we don't want just anybody touching. It can be in there. Depending on the person's level of licensure, they can only get certain things out of it. It tells us when things are expiring, and it's just something we need to be able to keep track of. It's a challenge of going to the paramedic level. When we fit out another ambulance down the road, we don't have to buy a second one of these. This one will handle storage for both.
Okay.
The final thing on the capital plan was a light midlife overhaul for Squad 3, which is our 2008 rescue pumper. It needs pump work, similar to what we had to do to one of the other engines this year that wasn't planned. It's got some corrosion issues that we want to clean up, take care of, some updates to the lighting, and some odds and ends of miscellaneous repairs. The goal of this, we want to get 20 to 25 years out of this truck. The goal is to make sure we can get the 20 to 25 years out of it. For road miles, this is our busiest truck. This one carries all the rescue tools. It responds on car accidents, so it spends a lot of time out and about. It does see some wear and tear.
So just to make sure I understand this, all those repairs would cost approximately $65,000,
Yes.
and they would give us 20 to 25 years starting in 2008. So it's 2020
We're about halfway
or
through the truck's
2033.
lifespan.
Okay.
Right.
All
The
right.
truck is on the capital plan for 2028 to be replaced
All right.
at 20 years old.
Sure.
On equipment grant funding, again, I mentioned the legislative earmark. It was this year that helped us replace half of our department's breathing apparatus. We had gone for a grant, but we were unable to get it. We did receive a small state grant for protective clothing. It's only about $2,500, but it's allowing us to replace a lot of our firefighting gloves and the protective hoods the firefighters use to protect their necks and their ears. We've had these for a long time. Part of the research that's gone into firefighting and the high level of cancer in firefighters is they're finding that a lot of the older style hoods were absorbing a lot of those chemicals around our necks our faces, where the mask doesn't protect, or the helmet. These hoods are double layered. They have a layer inside them that kind of protects you from that. So this should allow us to fit out, you know, pretty much all of our firefighting personnel with those. And again, in FY21, we are applying for a federal grant to update and replace a lot of firefighting gear. That's probably in the neighborhood of $188,000. If we got it, we'd be on the hook for about 10% of that. So we haven't had the greatest luck with those. Those will be pretty competitive. Other grants, FY20, we got an emergency preparedness grant from the state for the number is actually wrong there. It was about a little more than that. It was a little over $3,000. Basically for bleeding control kits, trauma kits for like active shooter type situations. We fitted out all the fire apparatus and all the police cruisers. And the voice is giving out. Again, we got a little over $7,000 for SAFE, which is Student Awareness of Fire Education, and Senior SAFE. This is our education program. We go into the schools, K through 3. We also work with the seniors, do some education down at the Eagle House there as well. These are our most vulnerable populations. It's also been part of the smoke detector project that Captain Reese's continued on, doing the Sand for Seniors with the Senior Center, delivering sand for elderly people's sidewalks, and going in checking the smoke detectors. We still encounter a ton of houses that don't have smoke detectors when we go in there, even in this day and age. Or we find ones that are there from 1970. Somebody asked me about one that plugged in the other day. It's like, it plugs in with the smoke detector, get rid of it. It's older than dirt. Just again, vehicle maintenance. I think you guys are well aware of our vehicle maintenance challenges. As the equipment ages, we see a lot of increased out of service time, increased expenses. We've saved some money with the excellent DPW mechanic we've got now. He's been able to help quite a bit with that. Unfortunately, especially with the specialized equipment, he can't work on that. He doesn't have the equipment or the training for it. When we talk about our apparatus, the age ranges on them. We sort of figure for pumpers, 20 years, the aerial ladder, 25 years, a forestry truck's about 30 years, the ambulances, 10 to 12, and I gotta start saying that's down to about 10 because the amount of wear and tear they're seeing, and the fact that we're traveling further with them now than we used to. And the support vehicles about 10 years. And those are reflected in the capital plan when they're requested to be replaced. The apparatus replacement, ladder 1 is hopefully due in April 2020. That's dragged out way longer than I would have liked, but they had some delays at the factory that slowed that process down. The new engine 4 is due in August 2020, and I'm sure that will make people happy to hear that that's pretty much it for the next few years for us for big apparatus. The next vehicles will be Rescue 1 in 2026 and the Squad in 2028. So, again, impact of the budget is recommended. Would increase the full-time staffing of the station from 7 days a week from 6. And it would hopefully implement the paramedic program, at least the first steps in early 2021. Again, wouldn't give us 24/7 coverage on it, but by 2022, 2023, with the additional staff in the 5-year plan, that would put us there to do that.
Okay.
The impact of the above target funding was the additional incentive of a 2-hour minimum for the call firefighters from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Currently, that's not funded. And that's all I have.
Okay.
Any questions?
Anyone? Dave?
A couple of things. The previous meeting that we met with you, Chief, we brought up the idea of a maintenance tracking program for the equipment. I've had a couple conversations with the DPW director as to what they have for records, and that isn't as extensive as I think what we were talking about, especially where you have specialized work that has to be done outside of the town. I think it's really important that all of that information for each vehicle be tracked so that we know when we get to the end of the life of the vehicle how much it cost us to own it for that 10 years or 15 years, and start making some decisions, or for you to help make decisions to maybe look at other brands or do something differently, or, have a real cost to that vehicle. Because all we do is we say, well, yeah, it's supposed to last 10 years, so we're going to plug it in here and replace it. But we don't really know how much that vehicle cost us after we purchased it. I think that's really
No,
important.
it's definitely
Private industry does that all the time. There's all kinds of tracking programs out there available.
I do know as an aside, the challenges that we've run into with our apparatus, Fitchburg sees the same problems. They have brand X. Leominster sees the same problems. They have brand Y. But they're all, underneath, they're all a lot of the same components.
Right.
Yes, but it's
But I think if
definitely
we can
something that's
put a
worthwhile.
number to it, at least we
Yep.
know what it's costing us, and maybe it is the same. That's fine. The other point is, as we continue on towards paramedic level 24/7, do you have some ideas on rearranging the rotations of shifts that will minimize the impact of overtime? And I know that part of that would have to be part of the collective bargaining agreement, I would assume, but there are other things outside of collective bargaining that I believe could save on the...
Well, there's some things that we've discussed about having some per diem, additional per diem medics that could take the load off the career staff, that they wouldn't be getting ordered in to cover shifts all the time. And that, as far as rearranging shifts, there's not a lot that I could see that would change it, not at our size. When you get into a bigger department, you could look at some stuff like that, but if we had several more people on shift, but with 2 people, it's not too many options.
But I did ask this question at the last meeting, and you answered it as I expected. Once you go to paramedic level, you're really, to be covered for paramedic level on any given shift, you need 1 paramedic.
Correct.
The other person can be...
Could be, a firefighter EMT. Has to be at least an EMT.
At least an EMT.
And,
Okay.
and the plan is like two of the current officers are advanced level, which dovetails nicely with that. So, and again, as we go down the road, we hire more people, we'd be looking to hire more paramedics, so you have more paramedics available as time goes on. So,
I've just heard that there are different rotations used in different departments that accomplish different things, and I haven't studied it enough.
yeah, there's a lot of different versions of the schedules and stuff, but it's move it over here, move it over there. It's really still comes down to a function of the numbers. And that there's some stuff that we can do for callback, because there's situations where we may need 2 paramedics for a real critical call. There's things we can look at with that too. And some of that we're building out as we go along. Got to get the people first.
Yeah, there's been one other question that's been posed to me by a couple of people, and that is in the statistics of numbers of calls, et cetera. When you have a response that's multiple vehicles, is that multiple responses or is that one response?
One call. One call. I know there are departments out there that do that. If a second vehicle goes, they count it as a separate number. We do not. That is one call. I always thought that was a little dishonest to say it that way,
I mean, if you identified that you did it that way and were very open about it.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
one call.
okay. Thank you very much.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Peter.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Sure.
Chief, I know you talked a little bit about this when we met off camera a few months ago, but for the benefit of the people who may be watching this or attending the meeting, can you just briefly outline the benefits of having a certified paramedic program, both in terms of services as well as the financial side of the house?
Certainly. To give, this is going back a little ways on the on the original paramedic proposal, but a basic EMT is about 140 hours worth of training. Basic EMD, we can do some patient assessment, we can do a few medications, but we're it's still put them in the ambulance, take them to the hospital. We're kind of limited on what we can do. I apologize if I'm looking at a microphone here. Advanced EMTs, which is the current level we're at, that's about 500 hours worth of training. They can do some more medications. They can treat for low blood sugar, things like that. They can treat breathing issues. What they can't do is deal with cardiac issues. That's where you come into a paramedic. Paramedics over 2,000 hours. Paramedics can do a lot more for someone who's having a heart attack. They can do the cardiac monitors. They can actually interpret the EKGs to see if this particular person may be having a true heart attack. They can push a lot more of the more complex medications to treat those arrhythmias until we can get them to the hospital. They can also do a lot more of the stronger pain management medications like morphine, things like that lower levels cannot. At the paramedical level, we can charge more for that level of care. Right now, we rely on it from outside agencies, either private ambulance service or Townsend Fire to do that. Again, it's going to be a case of if doing it in-house, we can do it quicker. We have the people available more, and if there's an issue, we can address it ourselves instead of trying to follow up with another agency. And like I said, there is an increase. I don't have the number right in front of me, what we estimated we would increase. I want to say it was around $150,000 we expected in additional revenue on this. And again, that's a number we estimated a few years ago. We really won't know until we start running.
Are there, you had mentioned the 3-year time horizon once the paramedic certification goes into place where you need to have full-time staff. Is there any benefit, or have you thought about, is that something that we might want to hedge?
Hedge how?
Like maybe certify later in the event that we don't have the financial wherewithal, or we have people that we can't retain, or something along those lines?
I think the longer you take to do that, the longer it's going to drag out the process. And I think, like I say, right now we've got 2 people that are already in training or almost done. That puts us pretty close. And again, it's always going to be a concern, retaining people. And I think you're going to see that no matter where you are with that. Some towns don't see a lot of turnover, some do. And it's going to be a function of where it is and what the pay scale is. There's a lot of different factors that go into that. But I don't think dragging it out would make any. At some point, we've got quite a bit of an investment into this already. I think it's time to continue moving forward with it. I think it'd be better for the town and the people we serve.
That 3-year time horizon, is that under what auspices is that? Is that under state law, or is there a regulation, or what drives that?
Regulations under the Office of Emergency Medical Services, which is under the Department of Public Health currently.
That's a Massachusetts Department of Public Health?
Correct.
Okay.
They say when you pull the license, you'd have to say you can provide it 12 hours a day, more or less. Within 3 years, you have to be able to show that you can do it reasonably 24/7.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
Other questions? Other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Dave?
Yeah, just one quick comment. I think the big concern is the turnover. If we're going to spend $90,000 to $120,000 to train a person, and I realize you're looking for a commitment. I forget the time period, but it wasn't real short. But it also isn't all that long for that big an investment.
No, it isn't.
And you're caught between a rock and a hard place because you got to spend the money to get that level of certification. But again, I think going forward, we still need to continue to look at the pay scales and be able to get into a position, if at all possible, where we can pull already certified paramedics from the available workforce and not keep losing them to either other towns or private operations.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
We're working on that through negotiations now. Hopefully, something will go with that. I mean, it's a function of pay, it's a function of workload, schedule, morale, all those calculate into it.
I'm going to assume that some of the people that are going through the training now, and I know assuming is never a safe thing to do, but I'm going to assume that currently people who have already been with the department for a while that are going through the training now. So it's basically, and I think that those are people that you have commitment from, just in terms of their past
The original
history.
2 came up from the call department. They were called firefighters here for quite some time, and they seem to have roots in the community. And that, so I would hope they would stick around. They seem to enjoy their work and seem to enjoy being here.
Good. All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Jay?
It's the callback, the 2-hour minimum you were asking for, there's no minimum now.
It's a 1-hour minimum.
1 hour minimum, day or night?
Mhm.
Okay.
The career people, if they come back, they get 2-hour minimum. And that was one of the things we sort of looked at. They have that through their collective bargaining agreement,
Yeah.
but the call people
Call
still
back.
only get an hour.
Just an hour.
We're trying to kind of just make some more
Yeah.
incentive for them to come back.
Yeah.
You know, nobody wants to get out of bed at 2 o'clock in the
No,
morning,
not for
but
an hour.
we still need,
Yeah.
we need people.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, if you want to send
Yep.
The PowerPoint presentation information on to the...
Yeah, I'll send it over to Joe.
Perfect, perfect. And actually, Chief, I'll say the same thing. I'm sorry that we don't have the setup here that we would have at Town Hall, but for the benefit of your slide presentation, if that can be sent over to Joe, she'll, or over to the PAC, they'll make sure that that's incorporated into what's going to be put on YouTube. So,
Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome, thank you.
and I'm just going to check the power on the phone to make sure that I don't have to hang up on Peter. But no, I don't have to hang up on Peter. We're good. All right. Well, if we did hang up on you, I would just ask somebody else to call you. But I think we're good. All right, so as we transition from Chief Sullivan to Chief Marino, oh, it looks like we will have a PowerPoint presentation here.
I believe we will.
All right, well, we'll describe it for you, Peter. As we're doing that, I do also want to say one of the other things that we will be adding to the agenda for next week, unless, Chief Marino already looks pretty comfortable. People can take a break and go get something to eat. I understand Chief Marino did bring banana bread. I can't quite tell. The other thing for next week's meeting, I just want to alert people to the fact that we will also have a presentation from the consultants who do the assessing of the new growth,
Okay.
because the new growth
Wonderful.
number has gone down again.
Yep.
So on the 5th...
Down from the last time?
Down from the last time, so it's been projected
Oh,
down
yeah.
again, and that's related to, and Heather will probably speak to this in a
Thank
bit.
you so much.
That's related to the
Thank you.
a solar farm being late coming online. So we will have that presentation as well to put on the agenda for next
You
week.
saw it coming, right? Because that's
So-
all your research.
Yeah. I saw it, say, coming, I saw it happening, say, 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought,
Oh, yeah.
well, we'll get out of it, we'll get out of the tailspin, but it just kept getting down, and last week or so,
Okay, and then,
the town manager said...
Chief Marino, whenever you're ready to start, I think basically, this is the microphone that's going to be recording. So, and this is Peter, who will probably pipe in from time to time with a question, and he's on the phone. Yeah, it doesn't look like him at all. Actually, I'm surprised we didn't try FaceTiming with him, but next time we'll have, we'll be able to tell exactly what he's doing behind the scenes, so.
It would be better this way now that I think about it.
You may need to come close, if you want to go ahead and just check the sound, so if you want to talk from there and see if you can be heard, we'll check with Peter, and if he can hear you, then the mic can pick you up.
Okay. I can see the meters on the mic, they're picking them up fine.
Okay, are you hearing him, Peter?
No, I'm not. If you could just either come closer or move the phone or something.
Yeah, the table moves, so he's coming closer.
Sure.
All right, thanks.
Move this over if you like.
Well, no, we need
It's the phone.
So we'll move the phone
That's the
over.
connection with Peter.
How's that, Pete? Any better?
Yeah, thanks.
All right, if I tend to drift off, so just remind me.
Yeah, I had it in that way because that's the...
Oh, this is the microphone.
Yeah, I thought maybe he'd hear it.
I made the wrong guess.
Yeah, we don't know. I don't even know if that's... Holy smokes, that's... You
have a copy of it in your folder.
Yeah. Okay. You all set?
It's small and old.
Sorry, I think I talked about all of it.
Have to get a magnifying glass, I guess.
Obviously, the first thing I want to point out is that there was an error made in the two documents. I don't know if you got that message or not, but it's been corrected in the new folders that we gave you. And I guess, Pete, you'd probably be at a disadvantage in that respect, unless you were made aware of that.
I think when you get to that particular number, then
Just address it.
you just highlight
It's
it.
page 23.
Page-
So you know, that's the
In the
error.
narrative.
Yeah.
The narrative.
You have the narrative, right, Peter?
No, I don't.
Okay, because it should have been in your email.
I have was it in the same email that came with Chief Sullivan's presentation, or was it a different email?
Chief Marino's came shortly before, should have come, did you get it?
Yeah, it's called a, in the, oh yeah, it's called a memo.
Got it.
All right, so they're referring to, there's an error on page 23. So when we get to page 23, that's, yeah.
All right, we'll straighten it out then. Okay. So I think I'll start out, I know I've done this for a few years now, and I've only been thrown out of this meeting once for taking too much time. But since this is my last year doing this, I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about the police services in general, in a way that may make you understand why it costs this much money to run a police department in a community like this. And what I'd like to tell you is that the focus, if you haven't already heard this, the focus of policing has changed a little bit. But the important thing, and I know I've said this 100 times, is the police department's state of readiness. The ability to respond to any emergency quickly and efficiently is a management priority and a concern within law enforcement agencies. Delivery of requisite services, the essential elements of policing that impact conditions that produce crime and that lead to a safer environment within the community requires resources. Modern policing assumes a strategy aimed at improving the quality of life, improved police services, police legitimacy and accountability, and a greater concern for civil rights and liberties. The focus of policing, as I said, has changed dramatically. It inspires a positive relationship between the police and the community. It's a guardian mentality approach to substance use intervention and treatment, something we're going to talk a little bit more about further on. It requires significant community involvement that leads to identifying and solving problems. We utilize geographical deployments that enhance customer service and facilitate more contact between the police and citizens and establishes a strong relationship and mutual accountability. Police services achieve a more effective and efficient control of crime and reduces the fear of reporting crimes. And I want to emphasize that. One of our biggest challenges is getting people to report crime. And we're trying to change that culture. We are trying very hard daily to try to change that culture. That is an important thing. People tend, when they do report crimes, they'll report crimes 2 to 3 weeks, months later, and they don't realize that we need the first 48 hours to solve crimes. So by the time we get the information, oftentimes it's stale. It's very seldom that we can solve a crime that's reported after 48 hours, and you probably have seen that on TV, I'm sure. There's even a show named after it, but it's very true. So, we're trying to change that culture. As it is, nationwide, there's only 17% of property crimes that are cleared, and our statistics are pretty similar. But we work to emphasize that the public's role in prioritizing and addressing public safety concerns decentralizes, our new philosophy decentralizes decision-making, allows frontline officers to create solutions to problems, and giving them more responsibility for the well-being of the community. So what we've done is we moved from making the command staff, or having the command staff create all this, or make all the decisions. We've moved that to the patrol. We want them to go out there and just do the job. Solve all the problems that they can solve. In other words, basically giving them a role, and it's very effective. We found it to be very effective. Efforts to control crime are more focused on an analytical approach, intelligence-led policing, an approach that addresses recurring crimes is a more effective way of controlling it. And that includes improving crime intelligence data collection and analysis, the relentless measurement of crime trends and patterns, identifying problems in more precise terms, documenting the nature of current police response, engaging in the exploration of alternatives, weighing them and choosing among them. And all these things that we do now, again, I'm telling you about this because it goes into our workload. And, I've talked to you in the past about workload, and that really is what our budget is all about. I'm going to get into looking at a little bit of the local statistics, but I don't think that's as important as understanding that we need a certain amount of help to get the job done correctly today, and that's important. Today we mandate urgency in investigating crimes, and what I mean by that is every crime we look at as an urgent issue. It doesn't matter what it is. What I tell everybody is, on the police department, I don't care if somebody calls and says their mailbox is smashed. Go out and do the best you can to try to resolve that. And I know, again, property doesn't talk, so trying to resolve a property crime is very complicated. And as I said, only 17% of property crimes are actually solved. But it's important to go out and make it the best effort to solve every single crime. It's good for the relationship between the community and the police department. It makes us look more effective, or we are more effective. And our solvability rate will go up. We encourage, and this is after 9/11, after 9/11 there was this big push to share information. That never happened in the past. That culture's changed also. We've changed the culture so that our investigators actually talk every day with our patrol officers. They collaborate. We have a sergeant that is assigned to the FBI. That's his job. He's a detective sergeant. All he does is investigate drug crimes, which requires a whole lot of intelligence. He shares that with the patrol officers, and it's far more effective when he does. That never happened in the past, and that was a problem. And that's what they believe that's some of what led to that 9/11 attack. Nobody seemed to know about it except one agency. So we use things like saturation patrols. I'll give you a small example of that right off the top of my head because I'm standing in school. The first day of school, you'll notice we put out a lot of patrol cars around the school. Well, because it's a vulnerable time of the year and of the day, most of the town's population is in this area. So you want to concentrate on where the population is. So we do that. And I'll touch on this a little later because we use money out of one of our accounts to accomplish that because we have to increase our staff that day. Very important thing to keep the community safe again. So our goal is to ensure that the public's confidence in law enforcement response is that they have confidence in us. Recently, here's some recent requirements too. And again, I don't want to belabor this, but this is important for you to know. This is what we do every day. This is what increases our job or our workload. And there's some recent requirements and responsibilities, and these are just a few which support control efforts, crime control efforts. One of them is the Governor's Executive Order 578, which goes beyond the scope of Mass General Law 22C, and whereby he has told us to designate a civil rights officer to serve as a community liaison. This is every single community in every single state in the country. This is happening. Massachusetts is one of them. and that's a point-to-point person on hate crimes. His functions to participate in appropriate community outreach, review incident reports, and identify bias indicators for potential hate crimes, and serve as a resource to the police department on issues related to hate crimes. It's his job to ensure that hate crime data is transparently reported, publicly available, and easily accessible. Another reason, the goal is to ensure public confidence in law enforcement's response to hate crimes. Senate Bill 2378, part of the Criminal Justice Reform Act, sets strict time standards for identification and processing of sexual assault kits and requires all untested kits to be submitted to the crime lab for analysis. So we had based on that, we have a time limit now to get those kits to the crime lab, and we had to go through our evidence for the past many years and pull all the other kits out and send them to the crime lab, because all of a sudden DNA evidence is so advanced that we can start to resolve some of those cases and have some success with cold cases. So that the governor or the Senate passed a law, or part of the Crime Control Act was to make us do that. That's a mandate. More recently, we're involved in the MAX system. That's the Motor Vehicle Automated Citation CRAS system. That was developed by the Executive Office of Public Safety through a partnership with DOT and the trial courts and the registry and merit rating board and so on and so forth. And what that is they want us to write citations or print them in the car along with accident reports, and that data, when we do that, it's going to populate fields and send that data directly to the state. They find that will be helpful for all those agencies to receive that data live. So what they've done in response to that is they've offered us grant money to buy the equipment to mount printers and scanners and so forth on our cruisers, which actually we were one of the first to actually receive that. However, the program was stalled for 2 years, so I'm just getting the equipment now, so we got to figure out how to install it. So that's something. Another thing that adds to the fact that the focus is changing. We're data driven. The claim is to improve officer safety, streamline data collection, improve data quality, and eliminate redundant data across agencies. Another one is we're required now by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 278, this is a mandate also, that we have to retain post-conviction evidence for possible future scientific analysis. So we've got tons of evidence for cases over the last several years that we need to retain now, which we didn't have to in the past, because again, there might become a time when they want to bring that back to the lab because of the advancements in analysis and try to resolve crimes. All good. These are all good things. But again, it's a workload thing. It adds to our workload.
Chief, if I may?
Yes?
Retaining evidence, do you have room at your station to retain the evidence, or do you have to, are you looking for more room for that?
Well, when I took over as chief, one of the first things I did is I had a wall knocked out because our evidence room was too small, and we had a room where we used to, before regional dispatch, the officers that had to watch prisoners watched them in this little room off the jail. That room happened to be connected, well, it is now, by a wall, or through a wall, to the evidence room. So we knocked that wall down, and then we closed that room in because the evidence room was so locked down. And we were able to add a little bit of square footage to our evidence room. So far, we're pretty good. I don't know that that's going to change in the near future. I mean, a lot of the evidence we can still move along, particularly guns, because we can give those to bonded warehouses. Those we can get out of the station. And that takes up a lot of room. So far, we're okay. And I don't anticipate within the next 4 or 5 years that will change.
Well, the reason for the question is that you're adding one officer per year for the 10 years. You're 3 years into that.
Right.
So I just wondered if you were going to start outgrowing the station. I'm probably getting ahead of myself like I did with Chief.
Well, no, I mean, we're trying to plan to use whatever space is available in the station. As you probably know, I've asked for the last 5 years to try to develop some space upstairs that's used as storage room, and it's quite a bit of square footage. So I don't anticipate within the next 10 or 15 years moving, in other words, having to add on to the building. I think we can probably go out pretty far, but it's going to take utilizing that unused storage space upstairs to accomplish that. And again, I think I've told you before that might require putting in an elevator depending on how it's used. If it's used for public space or whatever, that could result in
Thanks.
quite an expensive ordeal. But anyways, so I don't know. This slide here basically is a lot of the things I was talking about. A lot of the community engagement, crime prevention, quality life initiatives that, maintaining the school partnerships, that's an important thing. Thank God for, he's not even up there, for Hank, because he's a rock star down here.
Totally.
Yeah, we need about 5 of Hank. And then the effective investigative support, that's so important. That's a lot of responsibility that's bestowed upon the police to make that right. So you go to the next slide if you'd like. This slide is our current table of organization. This is just a point of interest, and like I said, I'll make sure I get everybody a copy of this so you can see it in real time. But I just wanted to point out how we're structured. I won't go into this too far. Go to the next slide. This is what it should look like in 10 years, after the 10-year period's up. This is where we should be at. And at this level, we should be able to function very well, depending on growth and everything. And that's a thing I'm going to talk about at the end of this presentation, because I got some interesting data. But this hopefully is where we're going to end up, because I think we'll function very efficiently at that level, at that period of time. You can go to the next one. This slide is a pie chart. I think it's in your narrative as well, I believe. But basically, I just wanted to give you a snapshot before we go into the total budget as to where all this money goes. And of course, we know this from experience, that most of it's in salaries. Very little of the money is spent elsewhere. The other biggest piece, obviously, being, I believe it's Radio Watch, right? Yeah, Radio Watch is, I can't even see that far anymore. Yeah, dispatch. That represents everything, though. That's the regional dispatch and our desk officer. That's what that piece of the pie is. And if you go to the next slide, it shows you the breakdown. I just basically took the whole budget because I couldn't put it on a slide. You have it in the narrative.
This is where we have to make the correction on page 23?
Yes. The correction I was alluding to when I first started was the bottom line under
Total police above target.
yeah, total police above target. The bottom figure was wrong. It was an error. This is the corrected amount. And Pete, I'll make sure you get all of this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you? I don't know if you have the old one, but you can see there's an error in the figures. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
You got it, thank you.
Okay, we're good? All right, so at any rate, this is the breakdown. This year's, that budget you're looking at includes 1 additional officer. The salary accounts including core time, community policing, investigative field services, firearms training, and shift inference. Those are all adjusted based on actual usage over the past 5 years, taking into account the current projected level of staffing. So essentially, in order to get the budget a mere $40 over the target budget, we studied trends and moved money around to make it work. And let me explain this further. So, for instance, we saw that our lockup expenses seem to be on a downward trend. And I think we have a slide. If you want to move along, I think we have a slide that can explain it better. The lockup payroll is on a trend downward, and it's not because our arrest rate's less, because we do lock up a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's because the desk officer position eats up a lot of that overtime that a lot of overtime we used to spend here, because the desk officer from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. during the week is a police officer and can do the suicide watch while she or he or whoever's there at the time. So we don't have to hire somebody at time and a half to sit and watch, do a suicide watch.
So that takes care of 60 hours a week that you don't have to have a separate individual doing lockup.
Exactly. And a lot of arrests do come in during the day that actually go immediately to court. And what we've been able to do with the cooperation of the court is bring prisoners up until 4 o'clock, whereas in the past they required us to get them up there by 2 p.m. If we didn't get them up there by 2 p.m., we had them in the lockup. We had to hire somebody after 3 o'clock, because, the desk watch takes care of that. But there's times when, if we don't fill a desk watch, we would have to hire a prisoner watch after 3 o'clock. Most of the time now it's covered by the desk watch as well. But that's helped us tremendously. There's been an improvement in the services that we get from the bail commissioners as well. In the past, sometimes we wait forever for them to get there. That costs a lot of money. Now they seem to be coming much quicker. We're bailing people much quicker. So that saves us money and labor. And oftentimes they're here before we even hire somebody to watch. So we're able to get the person right out without costing us any money. They're all booked, processed, and the bail commissioner comes in and bails them out. So we think that those factors are what are causing it's the only explanation for why the payroll lockup goes down. But I caution you that what happens is, if a person is brought in on a Friday night and they're on a default warrant, an unbailable charge, they're there till Monday morning, until 9 o'clock Monday morning, and at that point they go to court. So there's a suicide watch for the whole weekend. That happens a lot, and that pushes up lockup payroll up. In fact, there's weeks when our lockup payroll might be $6,000. And if that happens numerous times, this could rise, and then we're looking for a reserve fund transfer, or trying to transfer money back into this account. But we felt safe to be able to reduce it to a certain amount this year based on trends, and that's what we did. And we juggled money around to make everything work, and ended up back at $40 over the target budget. Is that, Amanda's like an expert at all this too, let me tell you. So if she has any comments, I'd like her to weigh in.
No, you're good?
Nope, you said it.
We spend countless numbers of hours, her and I and Tom, just looking at the budget and looking at ways, that either we can, try to save money, or we can move money around to make other things work. That, so we're not looking, we're not looking for extra money. And sometimes that's really complicated. But what the bottom line is, we try to keep an eye on that constantly. And you have to. Because like I said, one weekend can wipe out $7,000 worth of payroll. So, you got to be very conscious of that. The overtime account, sure, you can bounce around a little bit. Yeah, the overtime account, you can see it's on a little bit of a downward trend now, but it really rises. But that's based on what we did with the overtime account. Accruals were averaged over the past 5 years. The officer benefit actuals we used to estimate the current need. Making those adjustments more accurately reflects the anticipating spending and brought the budget within $40 of the target number. Like I said, this again was we're studying the trends and trying to make decisions based on the trends.
John?
If I may, just to the overtime account, I looked at it and I thought, well, it's maybe coming down because we're in year 3 of the additional officer, and I thought maybe that affected the amount of overtime that other officers had. That's not the case, though, is it?
No, because the overtime account only covers benefit time. We don't use it for anything else. So it's all based on what they have for sick time, what they have for vacation time, and personal days. That's
Unrelated to actual
right,
10-hour days or 12-hour days.
right.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're pretty sure that they're not going to use 15 sick days a year. In fact, we're pretty stringent about with our policy for the use of sick time. We watch that closely. But we have to come up with an average, and it's based on that.
There are some times when the spike, I think the FY18 spike was due to injury coverage, and we covered that every year.
Right.
That could have been a year where we had, I think we did have multiple officers out, so we would have had to cover their time out of overtime. Sometimes that will affect the fluctuation in the overtime account.
So my understanding would be that the overtime account will actually increase
Yeah.
as the population of officers increase.
That's correct.
Okay,
It will, and it definitely will.
all right.
But that's factored in on that 10-year plan. We already factored all that in. So it's not going to be a surprise to you. The whole idea of planning ahead was to make sure we covered all of that in that plan. But thank you, Amanda, because I forgot that was probably the only other time we use that overtime account is when there's an injury leave that we can't cover. So that has to come out of there.
Okay, and then just to also go back, now, does this mirror the fire department's use of overtime in terms of full-time officers have right of first refusal for overtime before you even use a reserve officer?
To cover their shifts, yes, they
Okay.
do.
Okay.
Fortunately for us, if you look at our records, I think the reserve officers take more shifts than anybody.
Okay.
So we don't pay the benefits, we don't pay as much salary in many cases, so. We're lucky to have the force multipliers because they tend to work more of this overtime. You know, typically, the full-time guys, they work full-time and, you know, they have to go to court and so on and so forth, so their spare time is valuable to them.
Sure.
And especially with this new generation, which I might talk about a little later, because that has a lot to do with what we do. New generation likes time off. The Z's or whatever. Anyways, the investigation and field services account, now that's the other, let's call that the other overtime account. And of course, that was crafted to fund investigations of police functions related to arrest incidents and police services, and investigations that took an officer beyond their tour of duty. So what this account's used for, obviously, we got to call somebody in to conduct an investigation above or beyond their tour of duty, or they have to stay after work because of an incident that they can't leave. And there's many times that we mandate them to stay, particularly when we need an arrest report to go to court the next morning. They have to stay and complete that investigation. And some of these investigations, a recent one we did was a prostitution case that took well over a month, I bet you 2 months. That was a case where we had to collaborate with a federal agency, or a state agency rather, on that particular case to accomplish that and to bring that investigation to a close. So sometimes these things take a long time and they eat up a lot of money, and that's what this account's for. I'll bring you back to the graffiti issue we had several years ago. That cost us thousands of dollars, that case, because that went on for so long. So that's what this account's for. The chart here I have here, these are just samples of scenarios that might keep people after work or might bring them in to investigate a crime. And you know, the detective isn't the only person who investigates crimes. Oftentimes the patrol officers we have to, for continuity's sake, we have to lead them on an investigation. We can't pull them off if they have to bring it to some kind of conclusion. So I just wanted, I think I showed you a lot of this last year too, why, these are reasons why. We track this. In other words, when they make out an overtime slip, or now it's done electronically, they have to put the reason why, so we know why, and then we can we can keep track of why it costs us that much money, and because obviously we want some legitimacy here. That's why I'm showing you this. These are all legitimate reasons to use overtime. Now, you'll notice we put a line in there for community policing, even though we have a community policing account, because that account's not funded. It's never funded high enough, and those things, there's a lot of cases where we have to interact with the public for certain reasons, and so we had to take some of that money out of the investigations and field services account to accomplish that. So that's why you'll notice we're looking for an increase in the community policing account this year. And again, that account's used for the community engagement initiatives, and some of those, as I said, here's a slide I put in there to denote some of the reasons we use the community.
Chief, if I may, just to go back to the other slide. Does the period this slide cover is a year?
Yes.
Yes.
This is a year. So it's, if I read it correctly, it's 584 hours in the year spread over 197, 108, so about 3 hours a shift.
Right.
Okay.
197 shifts. We had to bring people back or stay. That's what amounts to. Yeah.
Just wanted to, mainly the period of time. Is that fairly representative? That is, should we expect that year after year after year?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
At least, yeah. And the cost of this year, like everything else, what's reflected in that cost is a pay increase this year. We had a contractual pay increase, so we had...
This is also included in the 10-year officer plan as well. We account for this in that plan. All of these overtime accounts that he talks about is in the plan.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, they're all in a 10-year plan. So the community policing, the demand for the engagement plan, community policing engagement platforms has really deepened. And so this year we had to dip into that account to try to make that happen. That's why we asked for a $2,900 increase, so we don't have to use that money, because that money really should be used for investigations on community policing. What I'm going to do is, if you don't mind, I'm going to let Tom talk a little bit about in-service training, because he's a training coordinator.
Sure.
He facilitates all that. And so he'll tell you a little bit about himself and about training, and then I'll jump in after. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present this to you. I think I've met a lot of you already. My name's Tom Gamble, for the people that's being videotaped. I'm the lieutenant here. And part of my duties here is to manage training. And part of it is mandated by the state. We're under Mass General Law to provide so much training and service training for our officers that we have currently on staff. And part of that is updating the officers on criminal law updates, motor vehicle law updates, along with CPR, firearms, defensive tactics, anything that goes along with in-service training that we would have to provide for them. On top of that, we start looking at different things that are going on throughout the community and throughout the country, and what's current in policing. And we try to make training available for professional development. And a couple of things that we want to touch upon is we have a marijuana law that has been passed and it's legalized, which creates a whole bunch of issues for our officers. Officers are very well trained on sobriety detection when it becomes alcohol, but as these laws evolve and as marijuana becomes legal more and more across this country, we're dealing with impaired operation. And how to deal with that with operation of marijuana or drugs is a whole other set of training that we have to provide for our officers. And to say the least, we're a little bit behind the 8 ball in this because it's all relatively new, and it's something that we have to provide some training for them. And that's part of the trainings that we're looking at as professional development. As you've seen, unfortunately, yesterday we had an active shooter incident in Milwaukee, and it's kind of shocking, but it's almost too commonplace now, and for us, we need to be prepared. And part of that preparedness is getting our officers trained in active shooter, training our officers in buildings throughout the town, not only just the schools, but we also have a training plan for the town hall. And as we as we evolve into this, we do want to continue the training into businesses too within the community. And with that, we have to train our officers. We just sent an officer to an instructor trainer school. He's going to bring that information back to us so we can pass it on and continue to pass it on to the community. As you know, our communities are really struggling with opioid use, and it is really affecting Central Mass and in our area in general. We have partnered with Central Mass Police Departments, and it's being developed it's called a SIMS program. It's Critical Incident Management System. It's a database system that we can track people that are overdosing, people from our own community that are overdosing, and that we can follow up with that. What that entails is that we are going to start developing follow-up officers in some type of resource that we can follow up with these people and get them the help that they need. Because it is an issue that we need to start helping people at that level, especially if they're within our community. With this program, we're going to be able to know that if they overdose in Worcester, we'll know if they're a community member here, and we can reach out to them, and we can go get them the resources that they need. With that being said, with all that having in mind, our officers are asked to do more, and we have to train them. I think the chief alluded to being prepared, and part of that being preparedness is training. And it's an integral part of any police department in this country or in the Commonwealth, is the more you train, the better you're prepared, the better our officers are prepared. Along with that, I think our officers, we talked about Generation X and the millennials and all the different, the one good thing about our younger officers is they're like sponges and they love the training. The more we can train them, the better off they're going to be, the better our community is going to be, and the safer the community is going to be. Any questions on the training aspects?
I will just add that the training costs are also associated in the 10-year plan.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think you pretty much include everything that an officer
Yeah.
could potentially cost as you add.
Yeah. So all of that is funding our target.
And I promised the chief I wouldn't take up all his time.
It was informative. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, we don't want the 10-year plan to be like, when you sit down to close on a house and all these extra fees that you didn't even plan on. You get all anxious about it. So we try to include everything we could. The SIMS program and so forth, actually, the police houses are paired with a recovery coach, so they'll be going out to people's houses trying to get them to go to rehab. It's quite a program. And the A-RIDE and DRE training programs for police officers to recognize drug drivers. Pretty intense training program. It's kind of its infancy right now, but it's a professional development, but it's almost required now. Otherwise, they have no skills out there to try to detect any of this, and it's going to be more and more. And actually, I got a call from the security director of this new place down on the Lunenburg-Fitchburg line, and they're going to be hiring police officers a week from Saturday because it's going to open up. So there'll be a bunch of pot smokers down there driving cars and shit. That when you laugh, but that's another thing that obviously we got to adjust to. All right, yeah, go to the next slide, please. I wanted to bring this to your attention because, a couple of years ago, we bought this brand new traffic trailer, and it's got a computer in it, and it really does a nice job giving us a ton of data. And this is just a sample of the data it gives us on every street. Now, this here is Massachusetts Avenue, eastbound of Chestnut Street. We left it there for a week, and as you can see, now that's in one direction. It only does one direction at a time. The numbers are staggering. And I'm bringing this up. I'm going to give you a couple more samples. I'm bringing this up because the one thing I got to remind everybody is that we don't just deal with the 11,000 odd people that live in the town of Lunenburg. In fact, there's probably less than anything else. We deal with the tons of people who visit here and who travel through it as well. So again, I keep bringing up this subject of workload. Go to the next slide, please. Chase Road southbound, 44,536 cars. Now double that. That's busier than 2A. That's 88,000 cars a week. Why is that, do you suppose? My guess is because we're funneling so much traffic from southern New Hampshire down Route 13 and down Electric Ave into Leominster to Route 2 or through Lunenburg, down Lancaster Ave, Route 2. That's got to be why that traffic volume is that high. 88,000 cars a week. That's a lot. So that's what we deal with. This is Lancaster Ave northbound. Another staggering figure. 40,000 cars. So double that. That's 80,000 cars. So that's part of my theory, is that a lot of that southern New Hampshire traffic comes down Chase Road and goes down Lancaster Ave to get to Route 2. 80,000 cars a week. That's what we deal with. That's only a couple roads. You would be shocked to see the numbers on West Townsend Road, Highland Street, and so on and so forth, which is further proof that this is what's happening to our community. Because I'm going to go ahead to the next slide. The reason
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Can we go back to that slide for a second?
Yeah.
Do you have a rough idea, just off the top of your head, what the number was on Highland Street? Because the cars connecting between Chase Road and Lancaster Ave, I'm sure there's a heavy correlation to the traffic on Highland Street.
There is, but I can't give you the figure. I'd be happy to get it for you. It's just one, it was tricky just to get this put on paper the way it's laid out. I have it on PDF though. So I will definitely get you that figure.
In addition to the counter cars, do you have the speed they're going?
Yeah, it gives you all that. I don't want to put 100 slides, but we have average speed of the cars. There's a whole lot of data. Average speed, 85th percentile. There's a ton of data that we use. So, in fact, it helps us with our directed patrols because we can say, okay, on Wednesday at 7 o'clock in the morning, there's 419 cars. At 1500, 3 o'clock, it starts to increase again. So we know those traffic, that's, if we're not busy doing something else, we can send cars down to these areas because we know that's when the highest traffic volume is. Although, I got to tell you, it's always a challenge to stop cars when there's high traffic volume. It's much harder than it is when there's low traffic volume, believe it or not. To get them pulled over safely on there, so we have to consider that too. But at least if we can put a card on there, it serves as a deterrent, even if they can't get out into traffic to pull somebody over. And that's the challenge, is getting out without hurting somebody. So, yes,
I've been doing
John,
speed limit there ever since I got pulled over. It took me a long time to find a place to pull over too that felt safe for myself and for the officer. Luckily, it was just before Stillman, so there was that little wall.
Oh, yeah. Well, Lancaster Ave is extremely narrow for the type of volume on it. And if you want to see that data anytime, I'd be happy to show anybody. I just didn't put a sample of that up there because the point I was trying to make is the volume right now of traffic. You can go to the next one. Again, every year I give you this this is what, and I'll talk about this a little more, but calls for service always seem to, be on the rise. There was a dip there. I can't explain that dip except to say that's about the time we went to regional dispatch, and I know we had to do a data conversion, and I think that might add something to it. But you can see it. I'm not going to swear to that, but I think that's a pretty valid explanation, believe me, because we had a lot of trouble that year trying to get our technology working correctly. But anyways, you can see it, continues to rise, 21,816 this year. What that does is, it's a ripple effect on our budget. The mileage on the patrol cars obviously increase, creating a need for, added maintenance along with greater fuel consumption. And that's always complicated by fuel prices.
Sure.
All which appropriates our vehicle maintenance account, although we've been able to keep that pretty steady. We've done a lot of creative things to make that work. Calls for service, they invariably lead to the investigation of crimes such as larceny, trespassing, motor vehicle crash, assault batteries, robberies, numerous things. It leads to overtime. Calls for service go up, overtime's going to go up, or, investigation and field services account. Custodial arrests, the next slide. Whoops, I'm sorry, wait a minute. Yeah, you can hold it there. I forgot about that slide. Average weekly, I just threw this in as a point of interest again. Lunenburg is an oddly busy town. It always has been. I mean, having been here for over 40 years, doing this job for over 40 years, I know. But there's the average weekly radio transmissions that they gave me from this. They gave me this from Neshoba Dispatch, and you can see we're the highest contributor there over the course of a week. State police being down to 200, we're at 1,000 too. So.
We're the highest by a lot.
Yeah.
That'd be
No, we're busy. We're very busy, believe me.
There's also a more direct route to, again, the traffic pattern, basically people traveling through.
Right, exactly. So, go ahead, next one, I guess, everybody else. Incidents, go to the arrests. Oh, I'm sorry, you can go back to incidents. Incidents, those are cases that require a report because a crime was committed. A lot of times they end up in arrest. I think I did a list of those, right, again? Those go pretty much up every year. There was a spike there too for a while. I can't explain that. I wish I could. I guess I thought I had a list of them in there. It's probably in the narrative. There's a list of incidents, I believe, or those calls for service.
Oh, this?
Yes, yeah. That goes on in
This booklet.
motor vehicle crashes is much, we do as much traffic enforcement as we can, but again, we got to blame those spikes on the increase in traffic volume. You increase the traffic volume, you're going to have an increase in accidents. So that goes up every year. I know, John, you always seem to like this slide. Every year I call around and try to get this data. And
it's a favorite of mine.
Yeah. Incidentally, we're already at 100 arrests this year, today.
Wow.
Maybe 101 or 2 by now. But so the chart compares arrests, summonses, and offenses in the full-time number of people employed. And you can see Lunenburg tops the list there with probably the least amount of people employed. I looked at this more in depth every year because it's particularly where our local population seems to be going up. So, a couple of years ago, when you go by the federal census, we only have 10,002 people in town. Now, our local census says there are over 11,000. So I had to try to compare it with some towns similar in population and demographic, and that's very difficult to do. I mean, I looked at, is Weston up there? Yeah, Weston's about 12,000, but the mean income's like $250,000. The average house is like $2 million, and so on and so forth. Totally different. I threw it up there anyway. I left it up there, but they have 28 cops on their police department, and their amount of arrests, amount of incidents are so low compared to ours. It's crazy, but I always say, and I don't mean that Lunenburg's poor, but poverty has a lot to do with crime. So, they may be surrounded by towns that are similar demographics to us.
Do you break out the arrest by resident versus non-resident?
No. And honestly, our database won't do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I just know that because we are such a throughway for a lot, I was just curious.
Right, I know, and unless we could probably buy software to do that. We do partner to a small extent with Fitchburg in terms of their crime analysis, but we'd have to buy that. It's very expensive, something that we'll probably have to look into in the very near future that might be able to do that for us, because that is an important factor. But, I looked at a lot of other things here. Some of the, Acushnet is really close to Lunenburg in terms of what they have in town, and in the towns that surround them, and the anchor stores that they have, and so on and so forth. And, they got a lot more help than we do, and they do a lot less. And their overtime account is much higher than ours. But anyways, I don't, I like to show that, it's just a workload thing again. I'm trying to show that we have workload. As I said, most of these communities don't go by Weston. I just left that up there, but the median income levels are pretty close. The daytime populations, the home values, but the activity in this town is much higher. But it's important to consider, typical measures of police performance, arrest response times, tickets, and so forth, arrest rates. But the more modern approach to policing calls for a more broadening police outcome measures to include such things as greater community satisfaction or less fear of crime, the alleviation of problems, and improvement of quality of life. Those are more important to me, and it should be more important to everybody. A more sophisticated approach to evaluating the police today is one that looks at how feedback information is used. Not only how outcomes are measured. So I hate to do this, but it's probably good anyway to do that. It's interesting anyway. I know it's going on around us. Go ahead. I just threw this in too this is interesting. I look at a lot of things. I read a lot. And, I read a lot about generations because it's interesting in terms of crime trends because we try to predict what's going to happen next. In this, the data varies depending on every source you get it from. I read Strauss and Howe, which is they're like the pioneers of this way back when, of identifying generations. But it all depends on who you believe, I suppose, too. There's other sources I've read, Gene Twenge, Goldman Sachs, and so on and so forth. But a lot of them talk about the generations of millennials, the X's, the Z's, and all that. And the one thing it seemed to be pretty consistent along the board is they all said that the millennials don't commit as many crimes because they're the first generation of kids that rode around in minivans with the little sign that said baby on board, and the mothers wrapped them in bubble wrap, and they're not willing to take any risks. You know what I mean? But look at that. This is local data. This is our local data. Who commits most of the crimes? The millennials, right? So very complicated. But I thought it was a point of interest. But this is what we do. We look at a lot of this stuff and try to make predictions. In this area, we got to look at that. Naturally the crime rates are down, but us, I'm a baby boomer, and they say we're committing most of the crimes nationally, but locally, see what happens. So, we're concerned too, not only with nationally, but we're probably more concerned with what goes on locally because that's what we're trying to do is predict. And you can see, the X's too are a little rambunctious. So, so I guess it's not true that we didn't bubble wrap those kids enough. I guess, huh? We got to kick them out and let them, throw them out of the nest. I guess from now on, maybe the crime will go down.
I just think it's interesting. You have to be more concerned about my mother than me.
Yeah.
I don't understand how the silent generation has more crime than baby boomers.
Well, they actually don't. Well, yeah. Don't get that. No, that's their age. You're looking at numbers?
I'm looking at it.
Look at the color.
Yeah, looking at the color.
Yeah, red is silent.
Where's blue? Where's the baby boomers?
Green.
Oh, there's green?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's to the left of the red?
The silent gen, 74 to 81.
I think it's just empty space,
No,
Terry.
empty space. That's, yeah.
That's what I was looking at.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
Yeah, no, it
sorry.
looks like an empty space. But, so, we have to be concerned with all the data, but, the bottom line is we got to respond to the workload. That's number one. Otherwise, we can't do any of this. We can't be effective, and we can't be functional. And we have to have people trust us. They're not going to report crime, and that's a big problem in the country today. I mean, you see what goes on. We just reviewed a tape somebody aired on TV. It was this police shooting in New Jersey, in Jersey City. It was horrible. I look at that and say, that's a training issue. That's one thing we're really conscientious about is our training. police departments throughout the country got to really start emphasizing all of what I talked about. A chain is as strong as its weakest link. If you hate cops because you came from California, you come here, you're going to hate cops here until you learn that maybe things are done a little differently. Chain is as strong as its weakest link. They all got to practice that. But we got to meet the workload. We got to be prepared for any emergency in a meaningful way. That's really all I have. I'm blathering on here, but I'm taking advantage of this because it's it. I'm done. And I'm trying to leave a legacy here. I've tried to change the culture. I think I was successful at doing it. And going forward, that's important that it continues.
Okay, well, then I'll open it up to any questions.
I just have a real technical one. This 10-year summary for the expenses, will we see everything that's in the 10-year plan? You know how we've said throughout, the overtime's on the 10-year plan. This document will show everything that's included in the 10-year plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's just a summary, but those
Yep.
pages all broken out, and I explain it in the narrative.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Just a personal comment, Chief, it's been a privilege to work with you.
Well, likewise, John.
Really useful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm going to try not to go anywhere. I might even end up on one of these boards at some point.
We have an opening here.
I still live in town. Yeah. So, any other questions? Or?
Yes,
Yeah, Dave?
Chief, I just got a couple of things looking on page 17. I always get the numbers I and just compare them one year to the next. And there's always some unknowns or built-in things that aren't obvious to the numbers. I'm going to verbally make an assumption and tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Okay.
Lines 1, 2, 3, and 4. I see, if I didn't calculate this wrong, somewhere in the vicinity of 4.5 to one of the lines is about 5% increase year over year. Is that directly related to the new collective bargaining contract? Excuse me.
Yes, right? It is.
It is.
Yes, I don't want to guess. Amanda's an expert at this, and
And she's not...
it's always. You think it's 5% though? It doesn't make sense.
Okay, when you say page 17, which document are we looking at?
The salary.
Budget increase in salaries.
Terry, in this document.
That document, okay, thank you.
So 2, 3, and 4, did you say?
Yeah, page 17.
2, 3, 4 different
Administration
unions.
lieutenants.
Yeah, 2 is a different union.
2 is a different union. Yeah. 3 and 4 is the same union. And you calculate about a 5%, Dave?
My numbers that I actually got, line 4, lieutenants 5.2, sergeants 4.7, and administration 4.5. And I understand the comment that was just made that line 2 is a different contract.
Right.
I'm not concerned about the number, I'm just want to be sure that I'm assuming that it was part of the new collective bargaining agreement that drove those numbers.
It is. There's contractual raises this year. Well, it was finalized. That issue with the contract there that we have to resolve.
That we still need to
resolve.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's what.
And I said very long that I'm not questioning the contract at all. There were raw numbers, and I question raw numbers.
Right.
The contract itself, the only reason I brought up the issues that we have brought up is the procedure.
Oh yeah, no,
agreement.
yeah, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We're all, it's always a learning curve anyway.
Right.
And the
One other
other
line-
comment I would say is believe none of what you hear and half what you see, right? Anyway.
The other one that just jumped out at me, and again, there's probably an explanation for it, is line 17, educational incentive.
Yep.
That one's, again, my numbers come out to 38% increase. Now, you've also got an additional officer on staff, so I'm assuming that's a portion of that.
There were some big changes made in the contract to education centers, so that would be the reflection of why that changes in their collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, that's a spike because of that contract. They negotiated a big,
Not big, but
No,
it
that
was not big, so it
was,
was 3,000 over 3
yeah.
years, right?
Yeah.
So, but it was also, the way it's written in their contract, they're not eligible for the education incentive in their first year. They have to apply in their first year, and then they get it the following year. So there's a few officers that weren't eligible last year that are now, so that also affects, next year. Every year we add a new officer, they're not eligible that first year. So I think we had 2 additional officers eligible this year that weren't eligible the prior year, even though they weren't new. So there are some changes, but those are the actual numbers for who is eligible in FY21.
And that speaks exactly to the issues that don't show up on numbers and paper.
Exactly, yeah. No, I get that, and that's, obviously, we're here, that's why we're here, so, yeah, no, that's what we want to talk about.
Peter, any
Make
questions?
clear.
No, I appreciate the presentation. Obviously, once I get the PowerPoint, Chief, I'll take a look at it, and I may try to hook up with you directly if I have any additional questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely, no, I'm there whenever you want, I'm always available.
And I, of course,
I'll make myself available.
echo the John's comments and many others. I'm sure you'll hear plenty more over the coming months before your official retirement date. It's always been a pleasure to interact with you from the time you were breaking up parties when I was in high school to now. It's your professionalism is constant, and you're a great steward of Lunenburg and a great servant to our town. And I know you're not going anywhere, but you'll be missed in your current capacity.
Well, thank you for saying that, I appreciate that, Pete. And who knows, maybe I'll be sitting next to you on this board sometime.
That would be great.
Yeah,
You're more than welcome.
And again, yes, basically my interactions with you and your willingness to come and answer all the questions that we have regardless of how into the weeds we get. I've always appreciated working with you, and I've always appreciated your forthrightness. And yes, we do have an empty seat, yes. And, who knows, we might have people who are ready to retire from this board.
Yeah, right.
Might be more than one empty seat. But basically, and I do appreciate you, contributing to the culture here of budget season with Banana Bread. We do appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, no, it's my pleasure. And thank you too. And I just want to, echo those words I said to Pete is, I will make myself available anytime if there's any questions going forward to try to, make the process even easier. That's we're there to, be as transparent as possible.
Absolutely.
That's the
Thank you,
important
Chief.
thing.
Yes,
We'll take you up on that.
Okay, thank you.
When do
very
you
much.
retire?
My plan is July 31st.
Very good.
That's because that's on a Friday, and on Monday I'll be 65 years old.
Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We have no minutes for the evening, so we won't be doing anything with that. Do we have a financial or town manager report? We might, but we're busy breaking things down. Okay. Okay. I'm also going to assume that we are set for next week for the presentation from the assessor.
No, not yet.
Oh, we're not yet
Yeah.
set on that.
But
Okay.
that's something I wanted to just discuss with the committee as well. That's an update. So, number one, first update is not good news. We received notice from our regional assessing group that one of the solar projects that was part of our new growth estimate has been delayed. So that means it's a direct hit to our new growth estimate. It's about $40,600 less now. So I am going to ask the regional assessing group to come into one of our next meetings to give a briefing on new growth. Can I ask a question? Has the target budget been adjusted yet to reflect these changes in the new growth figures?
As we're going along, yes.
Okay, all right.
The department budgets haven't been adjusted, just the bottom line. So on the revenue side, that has been accounted for now.
So do you expect anything's going to change with the expenses?
So right now, we still have a surplus, because that's how the budget was formulated. So we've had, as you know, we've had things change along the way. You received the news last week. Our health insurance, we got a very favorable rate increase of 0.66%. So that was a savings of $45,000 on our active health insurance. And which also affected the school side positively as well. This week, the second update I want to give, the subcommittee, which Karen sits on for the regional dispatch, the assessment, they voted on a budget of $198,530, right, Karen? So that's a decrease from the estimate we had in there, so that's about $15,000 less than we estimated as well. So there's these fluctuations, and they all come into play, so...
Okay.
Any questions? The only question I have, and this came up at the school committee last night also, what other major variables do we still have hanging out there that we'll know by town meeting? I know there's a lot for the school that won't be answered until much later, but other than Monty Tech, are there any other unknowns at this point?
I mean, can always be an unknown that pops up that's not known. I haven't received the finals. This is a small, minor one from the Board of Health for Neshoba Health. We estimate a 5% in that. That's another small unknown. Monty Tech is another, as you said, unknown at this point. That we should be known next week. It is when they vote on their budget. We are going to be looking at the overlay account and seeing what, Karen's been working on that, and seeing what we need to account for in the overlay account. So right now we budgeted $175,000 in that account. So if it's less that we need, we can reduce that, and that's on the expenditure side. So
Heather, I'm sorry, what is the overlay account?
that accounts for abatements
Okay,
and
got it.
receivables, outstanding receivables.
Understood, thanks.
Exemptions. Real estate exemptions.
And I had a couple of questions going back to the solar project and the effect on new growth. That's been delayed 1 year to fiscal, say, 21 or 22?
So it should hit fiscal 22 instead of fiscal
22.
21.
All right, and so that $40,000 would have been realized in 21,
Right.
rather. So now, does that affect is that on top the reduction that you reported last week from
On
the
top.
assessors?
On top of that.
On top of that?
Right, so our new growth figure would be 193,400.
About half of what it was just
Right.
3 or 4 years ago.
Right, last year closed out at 366.
Okay, so just about half of last year, wow.
Which solar project is it?
The Nexamp project for Northfield Road.
How do that benefit the town?
The next, you mean in terms of the people being able to...
Yeah, who benefits from solar?
That project, I have to go back. I think there's maybe community solar related to that. I'm not sure. But, I mean, it affects our new growth, so it directly impacts us for what's captured.
And Heather, that was an agreement in lieu of tax.
Yes, and we have
On the amount.
right. And we have a pilot as well.
Anything else any other good news you have?
No, that's all I got. So, and it was a 2% for year 2 with the police contract, is that, yeah. And the educational incentive went up 1,100 for fiscal '20, 1,100 for fiscal '22, and 1,300 about in year 3.
You know, I honestly thought of that after I said we were talking about percentages don't tell the whole story.
Right, because you have to look at people moving up steps as well, so that's going to affect the bottom line. You're welcome.
Do we look at the building permits in growth?
Yes.
Can we get the data report on that?
That's why I am asking the assessors to come in to do a full report.
Yeah, no, that'll be good.
That'll be very helpful.
I think the other thing is we don't have as many big projects anymore either.
Right, that's what they're indicating is, although our expected new construction projects are running about the same, it's the larger projects with condos, et cetera, that we've had in the past few years that have really helped bump up our new growth.
Speaking of that, Howard Street, I talked to Adam Burney a week or so ago on that. When is that going to hit, or does anybody know? That's with some 500 units?
Yeah, that's still outstanding. I mean, they have, I don't know if they filed anything yet with planning board.
Okay, so that's in some distant future, certainly not next year.
I don't expect it. Yeah, I don't think that's factored in. Let's see.
Something I think we're going to need to start paying a little bit more attention to if this continues is the effect that the market's going to have and the virus on the overall economy and what that's going to do to us. We've always talked about, we've had some really good years. A crash in the market like we've seen, 3,000 points in 3 days. If that continues or holds at that level, there is going to be some ripple effect down the local level of some sort. We're already seeing it in the supply chain and the purchasing and having some real issues.
All right, well, this has just been very rosy. Let me all right, so basically then, we'll hope for next week having a chance to hear from the assessors. We'll certainly probably see some more action in the way the stock markets are going and the projections are going. And the virus is, hopefully contained. So next week, we will talk a little bit about the debt project and what we want that to look like. We will talk about the assessor stuff, and we will hear from Muncie Tech and local, and we'll hear from Public Access. So it's going to be a full agenda. Hopefully the lift will be working over at Town Hall.
Did it break because of early voting? Might have been all the up and down. That's my first thought. Oh!
Yeah. They're not early voting again next week, right?
No.
Okay, so I won't be in as much trouble next week with the town clerk's office.
They said I was still noon time on Monday, I believe it is, and that's it.
Okay.
I was told they were only upstairs till today, I think, but,
Then with that, again, we will be meeting next Thursday, 6:30, Town Hall. And unless there's any other public comments, any committee, do you have a committee report?
Yeah, TC Passing is design committee, now solution.
They have business too?
Yes and no. The contract with the architect engineer company is still being negotiated, so we're having to grow after that. The other thing that was decided last night by the committee, by a 4-2 vote with one member missing, was that we would present an update on where we're at the November, the spring town meeting. And we will not be, at least at this point, we still can change that in the next week or two. We will, at this moment, not be bringing an article forward for an actual proposal for the building, and plan to bring that, maybe most likely targeting November special town meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other reports? No other reports? All right, then, do I have a motion?
To adjourn?
To adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so, then, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Peter, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.